At 4:20 in the morning, a man stood up to use the toilet on a small ship in the Atlantic, and the floor of the room he was standing in flipped upside down. Not tilted, not rocked by a wave. The ceiling became the floor in the time it takes to read this sentence, and the lights went out, and water came in from every direction at once. His name was Harrison Okene. He was 29. He was the ship's cook, wearing nothing but his underwear, and in the next 4 seconds he watched 3 of his crewmates get torn past him by the current and vanish into the dark. The ship sank 100 feet to the bottom of the ocean and settled there, upside down, in complete blackness. 11 people on board that morning are dead. Harrison Okene is not one of them, and the reason takes 2.5 days to explain, because that's how long he was down there, in a pocket of air the size of a small bathroom, before anyone knew he existed. This is the story of those 60 hours. The ship was the Jascon 4, a tug working an oil platform off the coast of Nigeria, and none of the 12 people aboard had any reason to think that morning was different from any other. The weather was rough, not unusual for the job. A wave hit the vessel at an angle nobody had accounted for, and the tug, top-heavy, working under tension, simply went over. Most of the crew were asleep behind locked doors. That lock wasn't neglect. Piracy off this coast was a real enough threat that locking your cabin at night was standard practice. On an ordinary night, it protected them. On this one, it sealed 11 people into rooms that were about to fill with water, with no time and no way out. Okene wasn't in his cabin. He was in the toilet, and that accident of timing put him in the one place on the ship where the door wasn't locked behind him. When the tug flipped, the corridor he was standing in became a chute. He grabbed for the doorway and missed it once, twice, and on the 3rd try got his hand around the frame and held on while water tried to tear him loose. He saw them go past men he knew. There wasn't time to take it in. The water was still rising, and he was still moving. He fought his way, half blind in the dark, into a narrow passage, and the current shoved him through a doorway into a small cabin bathroom belonging to one of the ship's officers. And here the ship, entirely by accident, did something for him that nothing on board had been built to do. The door behind him had a seal. The layout of the ceiling, now the floor above him, since everything was inverted, happened to trap a pocket of air against it as the water rose. No design, no safety feature, no reason it should have worked out this way. It was luck, arriving in exactly the right cubic meters. Okene surfaced into that pocket, gasping, in the pitch dark, and realized 2 things almost at once. He was alive, and the water outside that door was still rising. He found a floating table and part of a mattress and dragged them together into something he could half lie on to keep as much of his body out of the freezing water as he could. The cold was already working on him. 100 feet down, the sea doesn't care that you've just survived something impossible. It starts taking your body heat immediately, and it doesn't stop. He had no food, no fresh water. Every mouthful of seawater that got into his mouth stripped a little more skin from his tongue, and somewhere close by, in the dark, he could hear his crewmates. Not voices. He knew what he was hearing wasn't that. It was smaller sounds, fish, moving through the flooded ship, feeding. He understood exactly what that meant, and he made himself keep still, and he did not let himself think about it for very long. Here is the part of this story most people never hear, because Okene himself didn't know it while it was happening. An air pocket that size, with one person breathing in it, doesn't fail because the oxygen runs out. It fails because the carbon dioxide he was exhaling had nowhere to go. Every breath added a little more of it to the same sealed space, and there was no way to clear it. Specialists who studied this case afterward calculated the real number. In a pocket roughly that size, a person has somewhere around 56 hours before the build-up becomes fatal. Okene didn't know that number. He didn't need to. His body was already doing the only thing that could buy him time, sitting still, breathing slow, expending as little as possible, because some part of him understood that movement burned air he didn't have to spare. He prayed. His wife had sent him a line of scripture by text before he'd left for this trip, and in the dark, with nothing else to hold on to, he said it out loud, over and over, to a room that gave nothing back. Hours went by that he had no way of measuring. No clock, no daylight, nothing to mark 1 hour from the next except cold and thirst and the sound of the water outside the door. At some point, above him, he heard a rescue boat pass over the wreck. He didn't know that's what it was. He just heard something, faint and far away, and it vanished as quickly as it came. Nobody had any reason to think there was someone alive down there to hear it. 2 days after the Jascon 4 went down, a dive team was sent to the wreck hired by the company that owned the ship, with a single stated purpose: recover the bodies. Nobody involved believed there was a second option. It had been well over 48 hours in near freezing water. Everyone on that boat was there to do one grim job and go home. The divers went down to 100 feet of black water and started working their way through the inverted wreck, room by room, pulling bodies free and sending them up. They found 3 of Okene's crewmates in the first hours of the dive. And somewhere inside that ship, in a shrinking pocket of foul, freezing air, Okene heard something that was unmistakably not the sea. He didn't have the strength left to be certain of much, but he was certain of this: that was a hammer, or something like one, hitting the hull, and hulls don't hammer themselves. He grabbed anything he could find, part of a fitting torn loose from the wall, and started hitting the inside of the ship back. On the monitor feed in the surface control room, a diver's helmet camera showed the inside of a flooded cabin, murky and grey, debris drifting slowly through the frame, and then a hand, pale, motionless, floating at the edge of the light. Everyone watching assumed exactly what you'd assume 60 hours into a body recovery mission. The diver reached out to bring it in the way he'd already done 3 times that morning, and the hand closed around his. On the surface in the control room, the reaction was instant and involuntary. Someone shouting, someone else half out of their chair. Down in the water, the diver later admitted, for 1 full second, he thought something in that ship had just grabbed him. Then his light found a face, open eyes, a living man, thin, shaking, staring back at him from the dark. Okene, on the other end of that hand, had spent his last reserves of strength getting close enough to reach him. He didn't know, in that moment, whether he was imagining it. He'd already started to suspect his mind might be slipping. So when the light hit him and a stranger's shocked face appeared 6 inches from his own, some part of him still didn't quite trust it. It was real. 60 hours after the jascon 4 went down, a body recovery mission had just become a rescue. The obvious thing to do, the thing every instinct in that control room screamed to do, was pull him straight to the surface as fast as possible. It would have killed him. That much time at that depth meant his blood had been absorbing nitrogen under pressure 3 times what it experiences at sea level. Bring a body like that up quickly, and the gas comes out of solution all at once, as bubbles, in the blood, in the joints, in the spine. It's the same mechanism that kills divers who surface too fast from a fraction of that depth. At Okene's numbers, it would not have been survivable. So instead, the divers got him breathing from a proper air supply first to start clearing the carbon dioxide that had been slowly poisoning him for the better part of 2.5 days. Then they loaded him into a diving bell, a sealed capsule that holds the same pressure as the depth it's lowered from, and brought him up inside it. Still at 100 feet of pressure, none of it released yet. From there, into a decompression chamber, where his body's pressure was walked back down to normal. Not in minutes, but over the better part of 2 more days, slowly enough that the nitrogen in his blood could leave the way it was supposed to, instead of all at once. Only then could anyone safely open the door. When Okene finally stepped out, the people waiting for him found it difficult to reconcile what they were looking at with what they'd been told. This was supposed to be a man who'd been dead for days. There's a habit, with stories like this, of reaching for the word miracle and stopping there, as if the only options are pure luck or something science can't touch. Neither is quite honest. The air pocket was luck, the geometry of a capsizing hull, forming a sealed space in the one spot that, against every likelihood, turned out to be exactly right. Nobody designed that, and it could just as easily not have happened. But surviving inside it wasn't luck. That part was a 29-year-old man, alone in total darkness, hearing his friends' bodies being fed on a few meters away, choosing hour after hour, with no evidence anyone was coming, to stay calm, breathe slow, and not give up the very small amount of air he had left to conserve. Remember the number from earlier? 56 hours. That was how long specialists calculated a person could last in a pocket that size before the carbon dioxide became fatal. Harrison Okene was down there for 60. For a year afterward, Okene had nightmares. His company offered him work on land, away from the water entirely, and it would have been an easy thing to accept. He didn't take it. He trained as a diver instead. Today, he works underwater deliberately, professionally, at depths greater than the one that nearly killed him. 11 people didn't come home from the Jascon fall. One man spent 60 hours in the dark, at the very edge of what his body could take, and decided that wasn't going to be the end of his story with the sea. So what do you think actually kept him going hour after hour, with no reason left to believe anyone was coming? Tell me in the comments. If this is your first time here, this is Underneath, one story at a time, the ones that were never fully explained. So stay with us, and I'll see you in the next one.